A single block of stone weighs more than 3 jumbo jets. This is not a thought experiment, but the reality at the ancient site of Baalbek, home to the largest carved stones on our planet. By the end of this journey, you will understand how a 2,000-year-old achievement continues to baffle modern engineers. We will stand before the colossal Trilithon, visit the even more massive stone left in its quarry, and unpack a history layered with divine ambition. How did a civilization without hydraulics or steel move mountains, and what profound statement were they trying to make? The answers force us to rethink everything we assume about ancient innovation. What does it truly mean to leave a mark on history that time cannot erase? To comprehend the stones, we must first understand the ground they rest upon. The story of Baalbek begins not with a construction project, but with a sacred whisper carried on the wind through a fertile valley. The Beqaa Valley is a natural corridor, a ribbon of green between mountain ranges that has served as a highway for people and ideas for millennia. Positioned at a vital crossroads, this was a place where cultures met, traded, and inevitably sought to make their mark. Long before the first colossal block was ever conceived, this spot was already considered a nexus of divine power. Ancient Canaanite peoples revered it as a dwelling place of Baal, a powerful storm god, making it a spiritual epicenter. Later, Greek settlers saw the same potent energy and linked it to their sun god Helios. So when the Roman Empire eventually absorbed this region, they were not simply claiming territory. They were inheriting a site already steeped in profound religious significance for countless generations. This context changes everything. The Roman decision to build here and to build on such an unimaginable scale was not merely an architectural choice. It was a deliberate act of spiritual and political theater. By constructing the largest temple complex in their entire empire upon this already hallowed ground, they were performing a powerful statement. They were asserting that their gods, specifically Jupiter, were greater than any that had come before, physically and symbolically overlaying their new order upon the ancient foundations of power. This helps answer the fundamental question of motive. Why go to such impossible effort? Because the stones themselves were the message. Their sheer mass was meant to convey an eternal, unshakable authority, to visually dominate not just the landscape, but the very history of the place. So as we look at these megaliths, we are not just looking at building materials, we are looking at the opening argument in a silent, stone dialogue between empires and epochs. The stage was set by geography and deep time, and the players were about to make their entrance. Rising from the earth at the base of the Temple of Jupiter is a wall that should not exist. This is the Trilithon, 3 limestone blocks that form a foundation so immense it seems to belong to a world of giants. Each one stretches nearly 19 meters in length, stands 4 meters tall, and is 3 meters deep. To stand before them is to feel a physical, humbling shift in scale, a visceral understanding that you are looking at something that pushes the boundaries of the possible. Their weight is estimated at 800 tons each, a number that feels abstract until you realize it equals the mass of 2 fully loaded commercial airliners, lifted and positioned with a precision that modern machinery would struggle to replicate. These are not rough, hidden foundation stones. They are the very first statement of the temple, meant to be seen and touched. Their polished surfaces and impossibly tight joints a silent declaration of mastery. The gaps between them are so fine, so perfectly engineered, that not even the thinnest blade can find purchase. This was not just construction, it was performance art in stone, a deliberate demonstration that the builders served a power that could command the very bones of the earth. Yet, as overwhelming as this site is, the Trilithon represents a solved problem. However they did it, they succeeded. The stones are in place. This achievement, magnificent as it is, only deepens the central mystery, because in a quarry less than a kilometer away rests a fourth block that makes these giants look almost manageable. But the true heart of the mystery lies not in what was built, but in what was left behind. A short walk from the finished platform, the ancient quarry holds a scene frozen in time. Here, still partially attached to the living bedrock, rests a monolith known locally as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. Its name comes from an old belief that touching it could aid fertility, a folk tradition that speaks to the awe and strange vitality people have always sensed in this place. The numbers defy belief. It measures over 21 meters long, nearly 5 meters high, and 4 meters wide. Its weight is estimated to be well over 1,000 tons. To put that into a modern perspective, that is heavier than 250 adult elephants. This block alone represents a lifting challenge that would push our strongest mobile cranes to their absolute limits today. Yet, as you stand there absorbing its scale, your gaze is drawn to an even more staggering sight nearby. There, lying at an angle, is what archaeologists call the Stone of the South. This titan is the largest known worked stone from the ancient world. Recent measurements suggest it could weigh an astonishing 1,600 tons. That is double the weight of the Trilithon blocks. These were not mistakes or abandoned rough cuts. They are fully shaped, their sides smoothed and squared with precision, clearly intended for a grand purpose. They are a project interrupted, a breath held for 2,000 years. Their very presence in the quarry is a gift to archaeologists, a textbook frozen in limestone. The tool marks, the channels cut around the base, the strategic gaps left underneath for wooden levers, all of it reveals the meticulous, step-by-step extraction process. We can see how they did it, but seeing the method only makes the motive more profound. Where were these true giants meant to go? What part of the temple complex was destined to be so unimaginably grand that it required stones of such impossible scale? The fact that they were even attempted tells us the builders' ambition knew no practical limit. They were playing a game where the rules of physics seemed merely a suggestion. This quarry is not a graveyard of failed ideas. It is a monument to a vision so vast that even the mighty Roman Empire may have finally met its match, not in an enemy army, but in the sheer, stubborn weight of the earth itself. Even our most advanced machines would hesitate at the task these builders faced. To truly appreciate their achievement, we must translate that ancient ambition into a modern engineering problem. The world's largest mobile crane, a technological titan of steel and hydraulics, can lift 3,000 tons, yet this capability comes with a long list of conditions. It requires a perfectly prepared, stable foundation, a carefully calculated center of gravity, and an army of technicians monitoring every movement. Now strip all of that away. Imagine the challenge not in a controlled construction yard, but in the rugged landscape of the Beqaa Valley. Your objective is to move a block weighing 1,000 tons, the size of a small apartment building, from a quarry across uneven ground, and then raise it nearly 10 meters to sit perfectly level on a waiting platform. Modern engineers would need to build specialized roads just to support the weight, design custom transporters, and plan the operation for months. The ancient team had ropes made of plant fibers, wooden rollers, levers of bronze or iron, and the coordinated strength of hundreds, perhaps thousands of people. The gap in technology is so vast it feels like a chasm. This forces a critical shift in our thinking. If brute force alone was insufficient and advanced machinery was absent, then what remains? The answer must lie in a profound sophistication of technique, a mastery of physics and human organization that we have perhaps underestimated. They did not just have muscle, they had mind. They understood leverage, friction, and momentum on an intuitive, practiced level that turned simple materials into a precision system. Think of it not as a single impossible lift, but as a series of manageable, cleverly broken-down steps. They likely used water or sand to lubricate earthen ramps. They may have employed counterweight systems, and they certainly used rhythm and coordination to turn human effort into a steady, pulsing machine. The tight joints of the Trilithon stones prove they were not just moving these blocks, they were placing them with jewel-box precision. This level of skill suggests generations of accumulated knowledge, a tradition of megalithic engineering where each project taught lessons for the next. So when we look at the stone of the pregnant woman still waiting in the quarry, we are not looking at a failure. We are looking at the outer limit of that knowledge, a project that may have finally reached a point where even their brilliant methods met an immovable threshold of scale and risk. The silence of that quarry asks us a humbling question. Have we, in our age of engines and computers, lost a form of practical wisdom that could move mountains with nothing but wood, rope, and relentless, coordinated will? The allure of a perfect mystery can sometimes overshadow the truth. When faced with something as visually staggering as the stones of Baalbek, it is tempting to reach for explanations that match their epic scale. Stories of lost civilizations with anti-gravity devices, or even visitors from other worlds, offer a seductive shortcut. They propose a technology so advanced it makes the impossible seem easy, resolving all our questions in one spectacular leap. But archaeology asks us to take a harder, more honest path. It asks us to look closely at the stones themselves, not for signs of laser cuts or plasma torches, but for the humble, human fingerprints of the actual builders. And those fingerprints are everywhere. The quarry walls are not smooth. They are textured with the precise, repetitive strikes of metal chisels. The channels cut around the massive blocks show where workers patiently drove in wooden wedges, soaking them with water so they would swell and fracture the stone along a planned line. The gaps left beneath the stone of the pregnant woman were clearly designed for inserting thick levers. This is not the debris field of a magical event. It is a workshop. Dismissing these myths is not about diminishing wonder, it is about redirecting it. When we credit aliens or a lost super science, we inadvertently rob the people of the past of their own profound intellect and resilience. We say their own hands could not have done this. The archaeological record argues powerfully otherwise. It shows us a society that mastered logistics, understood material science, and possessed an almost unimaginable capacity for coordinated labor. The real puzzle shifts from how they cut the stones to how they managed the project. How did they feed and house an army of workers? How did they maintain morale over decades? How did their engineers communicate complex plans without blueprints? These are the human mysteries that are far more compelling than any fiction. By letting go of the fantastical, we are free to appreciate the genuine, gritty, breathtaking ingenuity right in front of us. We trade an easy answer for a harder, more rewarding question. What does it say about human potential when a civilization, using only the tools of its time, could look at a mountain and decide to move it piece by piece for a purpose greater than itself? That story, written in limestone and labor, is more astonishing than any myth. The Romans did not rely on magic, but on a meticulously refined toolkit of engineering principles. We know this because they were obsessive documentarians of their own methods. Architects like Vitruvius wrote detailed manuals, creating a blueprint of Roman ingenuity that has survived the centuries. For extracting stone from a quarry, their process was methodical and brilliant in its simplicity. Workers would first cut deep, narrow trenches around the intended block using chisels and heavy pounders. Then they would drill a series of holes along the base and drive dry wooden wedges into them. The final step was to soak these wedges with water. As the wood expanded with tremendous force, it would cleanly fracture the stone along a predetermined line, freeing a perfectly shaped block from the living earth. It was a patient, controlled application of physics, Transporting these blocks was the next great challenge, and here Roman innovation truly shone. For moving massive weights, they employed a system of sledges, wooden rollers, and enormous levers. One technique described by Vitruvius is sometimes called the Penelope method. Imagine rocking a colossal block, bit by bit, onto a series of round logs placed underneath it. As the block rolled forward, workers behind would constantly retrieve the freed rollers and rush them to the front, creating a continuous, if painstakingly slow, pathway. For the very heaviest loads, evidence suggests they might construct temporary wooden railways, laying down parallel tracks of timber to reduce friction. Teams of men or oxen would then pull the sledge using ropes, while others operated large capstans or winches to provide additional leverage. This was engineering as a form of orchestrated human power, a symphony of coordinated effort. So the mystery of Baalbek is not a lack of known methods. We have the playbook, the staggering part is the scale. Applying these wood and rope techniques to stones weighing 800, 1,000, even 1,600 tons is not just a matter of needing more workers. It represents a leap into uncharted territory of force management and risk. Every principle they used for a 100-ton block had to be reimagined, every calculation magnified tenfold. The margin for error vanished. A snapped rope or a cracked roller under that much weight would not be an accident, it would be a catastrophe. What we witness at Baalbek, then, is Roman engineering operating at its absolute theoretical and practical limit. They took a toolkit proven for building aqueducts and theaters and dared to ask, what if we used it to build a foundation for the gods themselves? The quarry is not evidence of unknown technology, but of known technology stretched to a point that still leaves us breathless. The true cost of these stones was not measured in coin, but in human effort. To translate the engineering principles into reality required a mobilization of resources that would dwarf many military campaigns of the era. Imagine the scene not at the quiet quarry or the finished temple, but along the muddy, groaning path between them. Moving just one 800-ton Trilithon block was a logistical puzzle of staggering complexity. Modern estimates suggest it would have required a dedicated force of several thousand individuals, a small city mobilized for a single, snail-slow objective. Hundreds of oxen would be needed for raw pulling power, their strength harnessed through thick ropes of woven hemp. Vast quantities of hardwood, likely imported cedar, were essential for the rollers and levers that turned impossible weight into manageable motion. This was an ecosystem of labor, each part dependent on the others. Ahead of the stone, a team would have worked constantly to clear and level a temporary road, packing it firm to bear the unbelievable pressure. Alongside the stone, crews would scramble to place the heavy wooden rollers, then dash to retrieve them from the back as the block passed over. The most critical role belonged to the coordinators, the conductors of this symphony of strain. Using signals from horns or drums, they had to synchronize the pull teams with the men operating giant capstans, ensuring every ounce of force was applied in a unified heave. A single misstep, a rope snapping out of rhythm, could mean disaster, and the time frame, this meticulous, exhausting process likely took an entire dry season, or even longer, to move one block a single kilometer. This transforms our understanding of the project. Baalbek was not just an architectural marvel, it was a monumental socio-economic statement. It represented the Roman Empire's ultimate capability to command the time, food, and bodies of countless people for a purpose that served the state's glory. The stones are a permanent record of that power, a ledger written in limestone and sweat. They prove that the empire's greatest resource was not its engineers' minds alone, but its breathtaking ability to organize human life on a scale that still feels immense to us today. That final, agonizing journey from quarry to foundation may be the greatest puzzle of all. 800 meters of open ground separates the resting giants from their intended home, a distance that seems trivial until you consider the cargo. Moving a 1,000-ton block is not like rolling a barrel across a field. It is an act of geological persuasion, requiring a pathway not just of distance, but of absolute perfection. Scholars studying the site have had to become detectives of terrain, piecing together the most likely route this stone caravan would have taken. One compelling theory proposes a direct, engineered road built specifically for this Herculean task. Imagine a temporary causeway wider than a modern highway, its bed meticulously layered with compacted earth, gravel, and perhaps even a foundation of smaller stones to distribute the unimaginable pressure. Every dip would have been filled, every slight rise planed down, creating an artificial plain as flat as a tabletop across the uneven valley floor. This direct route makes logistical sense, a straight line being the shortest and most controlled path for such a precarious operation. Yet, other researchers look at the gentle incline leading up to the temple podium and wonder if brute force alone was the only strategy. Perhaps the builders chose a longer, more circuitous path that offered a shallower, more manageable slope, trading distance for a reduction in risk. A few extra 100 meters of pulling would be a small price to pay to avoid the catastrophic possibility of a runaway block gaining momentum on a steeper approach. The engineering priorities here become clear. This was not about speed. It was about control, stability, and the relentless, incremental application of force. The road itself, in either scenario, would have been a monumental feat of temporary engineering, a ghost structure that vanished after its single, epic purpose was fulfilled. This is why no clear remnants have been found. Over 2 millennia, the Beqaa Valley has been continuously farmed, built upon, and walked across. Any traces of that specialized roadway have been swallowed by time and soil, leaving us with a landscape that looks deceptively ordinary. We are left staring at the quiet space between the quarry and the temple, a gap now filled with olive trees and history, and we must use our minds to rebuild the vanished highway that once trembled under the weight of mountains. It is a silent testament to the builders' thoroughness that they left so little behind but the stones themselves, as if the method was always meant to be part of the mystery, forcing us to wrestle with the scale of their ambition not just in the destination, but in every difficult step of the journey. Getting the stone to the base of the temple was merely the opening act. The true climax of the operation awaited, a vertical challenge that defies belief even today. The Trilithon blocks had to be lifted nearly 7 meters, the height of a 2-story building, and then settled onto their podium with that now famous jewel box precision. How do you elevate a mass equal to 2 jumbo jets without a single steel cable in sight? This is the lifting conundrum, and it forces us to consider one of the most physically daunting construction methods ever conceived. The Romans possessed impressive lifting technology, most famously the polyspaston, a compound pulley system powered by a large human treadmill. These cranes were engineering marvels, capable of hoisting the columns of the Pantheon. Yet even their most robust designs had a theoretical limit, likely far below the 800-ton mark of a single Trilithon block. The forces involved would have snapped wooden beams and shredded ropes. So if not a crane, then what? The most plausible answer is both simple and staggeringly ambitious. They may have built a mountain to move a mountain. Picture an enormous earthen ramp, rising at a gentle slope from the valley floor right up to the top of the waiting stone platform. This was not a simple dirt pile, but a carefully engineered structure, its sides reinforced with timber, its core compacted layer by layer to bear the incredible creeping weight. The block, still on its wooden sledge and rollers, would have been painstakingly dragged up this artificial hill, a journey of weeks or months, inch by groaning inch. Once it reached the summit, positioned directly over its final resting place, the most delicate phase began. the builders would have slowly, methodically excavated the earth and supports from in front of the block, allowing it to be levered down, millimeter by controlled millimeter, onto its permanent stone bed. This ramp and lever method turns an impossible vertical lift into a manageable, though agonizingly slow, horizontal pull, trading height for distance. We have evidence of this technique from other Roman sites, used for placing heavy lintels and arch stones, but at Baalbek, the scale is magnified to a degree that feels almost mythological. The ramp itself would have been a colossal public works project, requiring the movement of more earth than the stone it was designed to lift. Its construction and subsequent dismantling would have consumed years of labor. This theory forces us to expand our view of the construction site. It was not just a temple rising from the ground. It was a temporary, shifting landscape of earthworks, a terrain they sculpted and then erased, all to serve a single, perfect moment of placement. The silence of the finished platform gives no hint of the temporary mountain that once stood beside it, a testament to a philosophy where no amount of intermediary effort was too great if it served the perfection of the final, eternal form. The true measure of their genius is not just in the weight they moved, but in the silence they achieved. After that epic journey up an earthen ramp, after the final levers were pulled and the dust settled, the colossal Trilithon blocks met their prepared beds. And there, in that moment of contact, something almost magical happened. The joints between these multi-hundred-ton stones are so precise, so flawlessly engineered, that you cannot slip the edge of a modern razor blade between them. This is not an exaggeration. The fit is that perfect. For structures of such unimaginable scale, the builders used almost no mortar. The stones themselves, through their exact geometry, became the lock and key. This level of accuracy transforms the story from one of brute force to one of breathtaking finesse. It tells us that the most critical work happened long before the first rope was ever tied. Imagine the scene in the quarry. Before a block was ever freed from the earth, teams of skilled stone dressers would have begun their meticulous work. Using bronze chisels, wooden mallets, and abrasive sands, they would have shaped the visible faces and, most importantly, the critical mating surfaces with painstaking care. Each block was essentially pre-fabricated to its final dimensions, a custom-fitted piece in a three-dimensional puzzle that was assembled only once, under immense pressure and with zero room for error. This required a planning phase of almost surgical precision. Roman surveyors, using instruments like the groma for aligning right angles and simple but effective water levels for establishing perfect horizontals, would have first prepared the foundation podium with absolute accuracy. They then had to transfer those exact coordinates and dimensions back to the quarry, ensuring that the stone being shaped would be a perfect mirror of the space waiting for it. The confidence this displays is staggering. It means that after investing months of labor to move a block, they were so certain of their measurements and craftsmanship that they knew it would drop into place without need for trimming or shimming. A single calculation off by the width of a finger could have meant disaster, rendering the entire agonizing transport process useless. This hairline precision in the Colossal is perhaps their most eloquent statement. It whispers that their mastery was not just over mass, but over mathematics, over predictability, over the very idea of control. They tamed chaos not with magic, but with measurement, proving that the greatest strength lies not in moving the mountain, but in knowing exactly where it must land. That seamless fusion of mountain and monument was no accident of design. The immense podium of the Temple of Jupiter served a purpose far deeper than mere structural support. It was the foundational layer of a powerful psychological campaign, engineered in stone to shape hearts and minds. For the local population, people whose ancestors had worshipped the storm god Baal on this very ground, the site was profoundly resonant. The Romans were not erasing the old sacred power. they were physically building upon it, quite literally raising their new god, Jupiter, upon the ancient bones of the place. This was a masterstroke of religious diplomacy. It allowed for continuity, suggesting that the Roman pantheon was not a replacement, but the ultimate fulfillment of the site's ancient destiny. The message was clear: the old gods were still here, but they now spoke with a Roman voice from a Roman temple of impossible scale. For any visitor, ally, or subject state arriving in the province, the visual statement was immediate and humbling. The temple did not simply sit on the landscape, it erupted from it. The colossal stones of the Trilithon appeared less like constructed walls and more like the exposed ribs of the earth itself, as if the Romans had commanded the very bedrock to rise and form a throne for their supreme deity. This blurring of the line between natural wonder and human achievement was a deliberate ideological tool. It presented Roman authority not as a temporary political arrangement, but as a permanent, elemental force, as inevitable and unshakable as the mountains surrounding the valley. The incredible effort and resources expended were not a display of waste, but a calculated investment. Every ton of stone was a brick in the wall of imperial control, every perfectly fitted joint a symbol of unbreakable order. The awe it inspired was meant to translate directly into submission and belief, short-circuiting rebellion with a feeling of breathtaking insignificance. To stand before that podium was to understand, in your gut, that you were in the presence of a power that could move mountains, and if they could do that, what possible chance did any mortal rebellion have? The stones were the argument, and their scale was the closing statement. Yet this Roman ambition did not exist in a vacuum. Across the ancient world, from the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of Peru, other cultures were engaged in their own silent dialogues with stone, pushing the limits of what was physically possible. Placing Baalbek within this global tapestry reveals both shared human impulses and its own singular achievement. Consider the great obelisks of Egypt. At the quarries of Aswan, the unfinished obelisk remains partially attached to the bedrock, a testament to a similar extraction process using water-soaked wooden wedges. Had it been completed, it would have weighed over 1,000 tons, rivaling the mass of Baalbek's largest quarry stones. The Egyptians mastered the movement of such monoliths, transporting them on barges down the Nile and erecting them with ramps and sand pits, a testament to a different but equally sophisticated engineering tradition focused on singular, soaring monuments. Far across the world, at sites like Sacsayhuaman in Peru, builders of the Inca civilization achieved a different kind of miracle. They worked with irregular blocks of hard andesite, some weighing over 100 tons, shaping them with nothing but stone tools and patient abrasion to fit together in a jigsaw puzzle so tight that the joints are famously impervious to a knife blade. This represents a pinnacle of precision fitting, where the shape of each stone was uniquely crafted to its neighbors, creating structures of legendary resilience. Baalbek stands apart by fusing these monumental traditions into a new form. Its builders were not creating standalone obelisks or fortress walls of fitted puzzle pieces. They were employing these titanic stones as foundational masonry, as the literal base layer for a sprawling complex of classical temples, colonnades, and courtyards. The Trilithon blocks are not the monument itself, they are the stage upon which an entire architectural symphony was performed. This distinction is crucial. It shows the Roman drive to integrate raw, overwhelming scale into a refined, symmetrical, and highly decorated architectural language. They sought not just to impress with mass, but to subordinate that mass to a grand, harmonious design meant to embody cosmic order. So while the global pattern is clear, cultures from every continent sought to express ultimate power or piety through the manipulation of impossible weight, Baalbek represents a specific zenith. It is the point where megalithic ambition was fully absorbed into the classical world's aesthetic and ideological project, creating a statement that was simultaneously a feat of brute strength and a manifesto in polished limestone. It asks us, if so many ancient peoples felt compelled to move mountains, what does that universal urge tell us about the human need to reach, physically and spiritually, for something that feels eternal? The silent giants in the quarry hold more than just weight, they hold a story interrupted. Their surfaces are a textbook of ancient engineering, etched with the precise grooves of trenching tools and the deliberate undercuts made for inserting levers. We can trace every step of the extraction process, a clear roadmap of intention. Yet the roadmap leads nowhere, and that is the most compelling part of their tale. Their abandonment is a profound archaeological clue, a frozen moment that forces us to confront the reality that even the grandest visions can meet an immovable end. Several possibilities whisper from the limestone. A shift in imperial priorities could have redirected funds and manpower to a distant war or a new emperor's vanity project in Rome itself. The sheer financial drain of such an endeavor was astronomical, and the empire's coffers were not bottomless. Perhaps, after the Herculean effort of placing the Trilithon, the master builders looked at the 1,600-ton stone of the south and made a sober calculation. They may have realized that moving this next titan crossed a threshold from monumental challenge to genuine impossibility with their current methods, a risk to lives and resources too great to justify. Natural forces could have played a role too. The region is seismically active, and a significant earthquake might have damaged the vital infrastructure of ramps and roads, setting the project back years at a critical moment. Or perhaps the most human factor of all intervened, the death of a key patron, an emperor or governor whose personal ambition was the driving force behind this stone-bound dream. Without his will to fuel the machine, the colossal bureaucracy of the project simply ground to a halt. These unfinished blocks are not a sign of weakness, but a reminder of limits. They show us a civilization bold enough to attempt the impossible, and pragmatic enough to recognize when the cost outweighed the glory. They stand as a quiet counterpoint to the triumph of the Trilithon, asking us to consider whether that completed wall represents the absolute pinnacle of Roman engineering, a victory so hard-won that they knew, in their hearts, they could never top it. The fall of Rome did not silence the stones of Baalbek, it simply changed their story. As empires crumbled and new powers rose in the Levant, the colossal platform and its quarry giants stood as a permanent question mark on the landscape. Without written records or living memory of their construction, their origin became a blank slate, ready to be filled by the awe and imagination of every new generation that encountered them. Medieval Arab historians, gazing upon the ruins, grappled with a scale that defied their understanding of human history. The most common explanation was that these were not human works at all. They were believed to be the creations of the jinn, powerful supernatural beings made of smokeless fire, capable of feats beyond mortal ken. Other traditions wove the stones into biblical lore, suggesting they were built by a grieving Cain for his son, or even by a race of giants before the Great Flood. These were not idle tales, they were serious attempts by brilliant scholars to reconcile the physical evidence before their eyes with the cosmological knowledge of their time. The very name we use for the largest quarry block, the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, springs from this fertile ground of local legend. A folk belief took root that a woman who touched the stone would be blessed with fertility, a tradition that transformed the monolith from a discarded building material into a site of hope and communal ritual. This renaming is a profound act of cultural reclamation. It shows people were not just mystified by the stones, they were building a living, emotional relationship with them, integrating their overwhelming presence into the fabric of daily life and spiritual longing. Later, under the Ottoman Empire, the site's strategic value was recognized once more. The massive Roman walls and foundations were repurposed into a formidable fortress, with towers and battlements built directly atop the ancient masonry. Soldiers now walked where priests once processed, and the stones that were meant to inspire devotion now served a purely defensive military purpose. This practical reuse ensured the site's survival through centuries of conflict, even as its original meaning faded further into obscurity. By the time European travelers and adventurers began arriving in the 18th and 19th centuries, they were encountering a place shrouded in multiple layers of mystery. They heard the local legends of jinn and biblical giants. They saw the Ottoman fortifications, and beneath it all, they discerned the staggering Roman engineering. Their written accounts and sketches, published in books and journals, sent waves of fascination back to a Europe newly enthralled by antiquity and the exotic. Baalbek was no longer just a local wonder, it became a global icon of the ancient and inexplicable. This continuous thread of human engagement, from medieval myth to Ottoman fortress to Romantic-era travelogue, reveals something essential. The megaliths had successfully transcended their original purpose. They outlived the empire that built them and the gods they were meant to honor, evolving into something more durable than stone, a permanent fixture in the human imagination. Their true power was not just to hold up a temple, but to hold a mirror to every era, reflecting back our deepest questions about history, capability, and our place in the long story of the world. The colossal ruins finally met the scientific method in the 19th century. As European empires expanded their reach, they also expanded their curiosity, sending expeditions to map, measure, and claim understanding of the ancient world. Baalbek, with its staggering scale, became a prime target for this new kind of exploration. German and French teams arrived, armed with surveying equipment, cameras, and a desire to bring order to the magnificent chaos. Their first monumental task was not interpretation, but simply revelation. For centuries, the lower courses of the temple complex had been buried under meters of soil and rubble, the accumulated dust of fallen empires. The archaeologists and their local work crews began the painstaking process of clearance, slowly exposing the full height of the Trilithon and the original ground level for the first time in over a millennium. This was archaeology as physical resurrection, pulling the true scale of the achievement back into the light. They meticulously documented every stone, every joint, every carved detail, creating the first accurate plans and elevations. These drawings and photographs were revolutionary, allowing the world to see Baalbek not as a jumble of legends, but as a structured, measurable problem. Early engineers examining these new records did what engineers do. They began to calculate. They computed the volumes, estimated the densities, and arrived at those mind-bending weight figures: 800 tons, 1,000 tons, numbers that entered the public imagination for the first time. And then they tried to solve it. Their proposed methods were often a mirror of their own industrial age. They envisioned vast systems of counterweights, enormous wooden crane mechanisms, or complex arrays of pulleys that reflected the steel and steam technology of their own era. While these theories showed a deep respect for the Roman builders' potential skill, they sometimes projected a modern mechanical mindset onto an ancient logistical one. These pioneering studies were invaluable yet inherently limited. They successfully established the hard facts of what was there: the dimensions, the weights, the precise alignment. They framed the physical parameters of the mystery with scientific rigor, but in doing so, they also framed its persistent core, the how. By proving just how impossible the task seemed with 19th century knowledge, they inadvertently elevated the question to a new level. They transformed Baalbek from a local wonder into a global engineering puzzle, a challenge thrown down by the past to the present. The mystery was no longer shrouded in myth. It was now spotlighted by science, waiting for a new generation to approach it with different tools and a deeper understanding of the ancient world itself. Modern engineers have taken the theories off the page and into the field. In recent decades, a fascinating branch of experimental archaeology has emerged, dedicated not to speculation, but to sweat and strain. Teams of researchers and volunteers, inspired by sites like Baalbek, have rolled up their sleeves to physically test the ancient methods, using only the materials that would have been available. They carve channels around smaller limestone blocks, soak wooden wedges, and listen for that satisfying crack of separation. They construct wooden sledges from oak, fashion ropes from hemp, and gather teams of people to pull. And what they have discovered is both affirming and deeply humbling. Moving a block weighing 10 tons, roughly the size of a large car, is an arduous but achievable task. With a well-greased sledge, a sturdy ramp, and a coordinated crew of 40 or 50 individuals, the stone begins to slide. It proves the core physics are sound. The principles of leverage, friction reduction, and synchronized labor absolutely work. You can feel the truth of it in your muscles and see it in the incremental progress across a field. This tangible success is vital, for it silences any doubt that the ancients possessed a viable toolkit. Yet, within that very success lies a far more profound revelation. The challenge does not scale in a linear way. Doubling the weight of the stone does not simply mean you need twice as many people or twice as many ropes. The problems multiply. Friction increases disproportionately, demanding ever more lubrication and ever stronger, thicker timbers for the rollers, which themselves begin to risk splintering under the colossal load. The coordination of a team of 50 is complex, but the coordination of a hypothetical team of 500, all heaving in perfect unison to move 1,000 tons, enters the realm of something closer to a military operation. A single voice cannot command that many, requiring a system of signals, foremen, and practiced rhythms that must be maintained for weeks on end without a catastrophic lapse. These modern experiments, while invaluable, expose a critical gap. They demonstrate the how of the method, but they also illuminate the staggering chasm of scale. Moving a 10-ton block is a weekend project for dedicated enthusiasts. Moving an 800-ton block is a generational undertaking for a civilization. The difference is not one of degree, but of kind. It shifts the mystery from the realm of basic physics to the pinnacle of systems management. The Romans at Baalbek were not just master craftsmen, they were master logisticians, project managers on a scale we can simulate but have never truly replicated. Their genius may have been less in inventing the wheel and more in orchestrating 1,000 of them to turn in flawless, silent harmony for years on end. Behind every ton of quarried limestone stood a human being. The true foundation of Baalbek was not stone, but society, a vast and intricate machine of people whose lives were temporarily bent to a single, staggering purpose. While the architects designed and the engineers calculated, the physical reality of moving mountains fell to a workforce of thousands, a diverse and stratified community living in the shadow of the rising temple. At the top of this social pyramid were the specialists, Roman legionaries, often veterans skilled in construction from building forts and roads across the empire, provided a core of disciplined technical knowledge. They understood geometry, surveying, and the principles of mechanics. Alongside them worked master architects from Rome or Antioch, carpenters who crafted the vital sledges and rollers, and rope makers producing the thick hemp cables that were the project's sinews. But the bulk of the force was drawn from the local population and the grim institution of slavery that underpinned the ancient economy. Thousands of laborers, both conscripted and enslaved, provided the relentless, coordinated muscle power. This was not a chaotic mob, but a meticulously organized hierarchy. Skilled foremen translated the engineers' plans into shouted commands, directing teams assigned to specific, repetitive tasks. Quartermasters operated a supply chain of staggering proportions, ensuring a constant flow of food, water, tools, and materials to this temporary city of workers. The economic impact on the Beqaa Valley would have been seismic. Local farmers sold their grain, olives, and wine to feed the multitude. Woodcutters harvested entire forests of cedar from the nearby mountains for timber. Blacksmiths' forges glowed day and night, producing and repairing countless iron chisels and tools. In one sense, the project was an economic stimulus, pouring imperial wealth into the region. In another, it was a massive extraction, consuming local resources and human labor to feed Rome's symbolic appetite. Managing this workforce was a social engineering feat rivaling the architectural one. A sprawling encampment, a small city of tents and temporary barracks, would have grown around the construction site. This required sanitation, security, and a system to maintain order over years, if not decades. The potential for unrest, illness, or accident was a constant threat, requiring a structure of oversight as robust as the stone walls they were building. The psychological dimension was equally complex. For a local laborer, the work might have been a source of pride, a connection to a new, dominant power, or simply a means of survival. For an enslaved person, it was pure coercion, a life defined by dust, exhaustion, and the immense, indifferent weight of the stones. This hidden human infrastructure is the ultimate context for the marvel we see today. The silent precision of the Trilithon joints speaks not just of technical skill, but of an unimaginable scale of coordinated effort, of countless individual actions. A pull on a rope, a strike of a hammer, a hand placing a roller, all funneled toward a single, perfect outcome. The temple platform is, in a very real sense, a monument to their collective breath, their sweat, and their vanished stories. We marvel at the stones, but we must also remember the society that lifted them, a fragile, temporary engine of flesh and will that made the impossible merely difficult, and then, stone by backbreaking stone, made it real. The ground beneath Baalbek has never been still. The Beqaa Valley sits along a complex web of fault lines, a geological reality that has rumbled through the site's entire history. Major earthquakes have struck the region with terrible regularity, each tremor rewriting the landscape and the works of humanity upon it. These were not minor events, but catastrophic releases of energy that shook the very mountains. The elegant upper colonnades of the Temple of Jupiter, with their tall, slender columns and intricate cornices, were tragically vulnerable to this lateral force. Over centuries, one quake after another sent these magnificent structures crashing down in cascades of marble and limestone, leaving the haunting field of fallen columns we see scattered across the podium today. Yet, amidst this repeated devastation, a profound truth emerged. The colossal megalithic platform, the very foundation of the complex, remained stubbornly, defiantly intact. While the graceful temple above was shattered, the 1,000-ton blocks of the Trilithon did not budge. They did not crack or shift out of alignment. They simply held, as immovable as the day they were placed. This is not a coincidence, but a direct result of their staggering mass and brilliant design. In seismic engineering, mass and low center of gravity are key allies against shaking. The Trilithon's incredible weight and its tight, interlocking joints created a monolithic unit that effectively resisted the lateral forces that toppled the taller, more flexible structures above. It was a fortress built into the earth itself. This endurance through millennia of tremors offers us a silent, powerful lesson in ancient engineering intuition. They may not have understood plate tectonics, but they understood stability. By choosing to build a foundation of such overwhelming scale and precision, they inadvertently created one of the most earthquake-resistant structures of the ancient world. The seismic history also adds a compelling layer to the mystery of the abandoned quarry blocks. Imagine the scene after a major quake. The carefully prepared transport road, that temporary masterpiece of leveled earth and compacted gravel, could have been torn apart by fissures or buried under landslides. The complex system of ramps and lifting infrastructure, representing years of labor, might have been rendered useless in minutes. If such an event struck at the precise moment between extracting a titan and moving it, the economic and logistical setback could have been terminal for that phase of the project. It would have been a devastating message from nature itself, a reminder that even the most ambitious human plans exist at the mercy of the planet's deeper rhythms. So when we look at the fallen columns, we see a story of fragility, but when we look at the unmoved stones of the podium, we see a story of profound resilience. The builders sought to create an eternal home for their gods, and against the one force that could truly test that eternity, the Earth's own restless power, their foundation did not fail. These stones were a language, and their grammar was written in weight and alignment. To understand Baalbek fully, we must listen to what they were saying beyond mere engineering. In the Roman worldview, the universe was a structured hierarchy, a great chain of being. At the summit was Jupiter, the king of the gods, ruler of the sky, lightning, and cosmic order. Below him was the earthly realm, the solid, enduring foundation of rock and soil. The architecture of the temple was designed to make this cosmic hierarchy physically manifest. The colossal limestone platform, hewn from the very bones of the earth, represented the solid, unshakable ground of the world. Rising from it, the soaring columns and the vast sanctuary of the temple proper reached for the heavens, the domain of Jupiter. The structure was a literal bridge, a vertical axis connecting earth and sky. The Trilithon, therefore, was far more than a sturdy base. It was a symbolic representation of the earthly realm's submission to and support of divine authority. By using the largest stones ever moved by human hands to form this foundation, the builders were making a theological argument in limestone that the worship of Jupiter was the most fundamental, the most foundational act a society could perform. Even the number 3 of the Trilithon may have resonated with symbolic meaning, echoing Roman concepts of harmony, the triad of the Capitoline gods, Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, or the threefold division of the world. The very act of construction reinforced this message. Moving a mountain to build a temple is the ultimate metaphor for imposing human will and divine order upon the raw chaos of nature. The quarry was chaos, the untouched, formless earth. The temple podium was cosmos, perfect geometry and precise alignment. The journey of each stone from one state to the other was a ritual of transformation, a physical enactment of the Roman civilizing mission. This was not just building, it was world-making. Every perfectly fitted joint declared that here, in this place, chaos had been defeated and eternal order established. This symbolism directly served political power. The emperor in Rome was seen as Jupiter's representative on Earth, the guarantor of this cosmic order. By funding and commanding such a project, the emperor positioned himself as the indispensable link in this sacred architecture. He was the one whose will could command mountains to move, channeling divine authority to reshape the world. For a visitor, the experience was designed to be overwhelming and instructive. You would first encounter the impossible weight of the earthly foundation, feel your own smallness against it, and then your gaze would be drawn upward along the elegant columns to the open sky. The physical journey mirrored the spiritual one, from the heavy material world to the light divine realm. The stones forced your body to understand a concept before your mind could even articulate it. They communicated that the divine was not an abstract idea, but a physical, tangible force that required an equally tangible response, a foundation of such scale that it could only be described as an act of geology. In the end, the most enduring message of Baalbek may be this, that for the Romans, faith was not a quiet prayer, but a conversation held in the only language they believed was worthy of the gods, the deafening, magnificent silence of stone. The same forces of time that the Romans defied are now the very elements threatening their legacy. After surviving earthquakes and empires, the megaliths of Baalbek face a new and insidious suite of challenges, not from grand cataclysms but from quiet, persistent erosion. Air pollution from nearby urban centers deposits acidic particles on the ancient limestone, a chemical reaction that slowly eats away at the stone's surface over decades. Fluctuating groundwater, influenced by modern agriculture and climate, seeps into the foundation, weakening the soil and promoting damaging salt crystallization within the stone itself. Even the roots of small plants, finding purchase in the microscopic cracks of those famous joints, can exert enough pressure over years to widen fissures. These environmental pressures are compounded by a more human force, the immense popularity of the site itself. The footsteps of thousands of visitors each day, while a testament to the stone's enduring power, create vibrations and wear on pathways that subtly stress the ancient foundations. In a region marked by political instability, the consistent funding and long-term planning required for major conservation become exceptionally difficult to secure. Protecting these stones is no longer a passive act of observation. It is an active, ongoing battle against an array of quiet adversaries. The conservation teams working at Baalbek are modern guardians engaged in a delicate dance. Their tools are not chisels and ramps, but moisture sensors, laser scanners, and drones. They meticulously monitor known cracks for any movement, using digital calipers to track changes as fine as a fraction of a millimeter. They carefully remove invasive vegetation from the joints, not with harsh chemicals, but with precise manual tools to avoid damaging the original stone surfaces. Visitor pathways are strategically routed to distribute foot traffic and prevent concentrated wear on the most fragile areas. Yet the very scale that makes the site miraculous also makes its preservation uniquely complex. How do you stabilize a crack in a stone that weighs 1,000 tons? Traditional methods like injecting grout or adding external supports must be completely reimagined for such massive historic fabric. Any intervention must be minimal, reversible, and invisible, respecting the original material while halting decay. This work is a profound responsibility. Preserving Baalbek is not merely about maintaining old rocks. It is about safeguarding a physical manuscript of human ambition. Each stone is a page in a story of technological daring, a lesson in what our species can achieve when vision, organization, and will converge. Its loss would be a fracture in our collective memory. This task transcends national borders, requiring international expertise, sustained funding, and a shared commitment that the most awe-inspiring chapters of our past remain legible for every generation that follows, a foundation not just for a temple, but for our ongoing understanding of human potential. A computer screen now offers a window into the ancient quarry. Where we once had only static diagrams and educated guesses, we have a dynamic, digital proving ground. Archaeologists and engineers are employing three-dimensional laser scanning to capture the stones of Baalbek with a level of detail that is almost forensic. Millions of data points gathered from every angle coalesce into a perfect virtual twin of each megalith, every tool mark, and the exact contours of the landscape. This is more than a high-tech photograph. It is an interactive laboratory. With this precise model loaded into specialized software, researchers can ask questions that would be impossible or far too dangerous to test in the real world. They can apply virtual forces to the digital stone, simulating the immense stress that would have been placed on a wooden roller or a hemp rope during a lift. They can test different angles for earthen ramps, calculating the exact slope where the required pulling force would exceed what a realistic number of humans or oxen could provide. These simulations allow them to systematically rule out methods that, while plausible on paper, would have led to catastrophic failure under the actual physical conditions. The most powerful application, however, is in visualization. Using the data from these scans, digital artists and engineers can collaborate to build animated sequences that breathe life into the theories. We can watch a time-lapse of the stone of the pregnant woman being separated from the bedrock, wooden wedges swelling in their channels. We can see a virtual workforce represented by countless animated figures, synchronizing their pull on ropes that snake up a massive, digitally reconstructed ramp. The sledge inches forward, rollers cycling from back to front in a hypnotic, coordinated dance. These animations do not claim to be a historical recording. They are a sophisticated form of visual hypothesis. They take the dry mechanics described by Vitruvius and translate them into a visceral, comprehensible flow of action and reaction. This process of virtual experimentation is fundamentally changing how we approach the mystery. It moves us from wondering what might have worked to understanding with increasing confidence what almost certainly could not have. By eliminating the impossible, the realm of the plausible comes into sharper, more detailed focus. We are not finding a single answer, but we are building a far more credible and awe-inspiring picture of the ambition, the patience, and the breathtaking coordination that turned a mountain into a message. The stones of Baalbek have a gravitational pull on the modern imagination, a force that extends far beyond the dusty pages of academic journals. You will find their silhouette in prime-time documentaries, their mystery fueling best-selling books on ancient enigmas, and their colossal scale recreated as a backdrop in major video games. This widespread fascination is a powerful cultural phenomenon, a testament to the site's enduring ability to spark that fundamental human question: how did they do that? This popularity is a double-edged sword, however. On one hand, it generates vital global awareness and can translate into tangible support for conservation and research. More eyes on Baalbek means more people who care about its survival. Yet, the very nature of popular media, which thrives on mystery and spectacle, can sometimes simplify or distort the narrative. In the race for a compelling headline, the slow, meticulous work of archaeology can be overshadowed by more sensational claims, from lost technologies to divine intervention. This creates a challenging landscape for anyone seeking to understand the site's true story. The task is not to dismiss the public's wonder, which is genuine and valuable, but to carefully channel it. It is about presenting the solid, often even more astonishing, archaeological evidence in a way that is just as engaging as any fiction. We must show that the real story, one of human ingenuity, staggering logistics, and profound cultural expression, is more satisfying than any shortcut answer. This is the balance we strive for in explorations like this one, honoring the awe while grounding it in the remarkable reality written in the stone itself. The polished certainty of the finished platform masks a web of persistent, tantalizing unknowns. Even with all our tools and theories, fundamental questions about Baalbek's construction sequence remain stubbornly unresolved. We know the Trilithon is there, but the precise order of operations is a puzzle. Did the builders first lay the entire massive foundation course, including the smaller stones, and then attempt to slide the titans into their specific slots? Or did they position the three colossal blocks first, using them as immovable anchor points to guide the placement of everything else around them? Each scenario presents its own nightmarish logistical challenges, forcing us to reconsider the choreography of this ancient ballet of weight and space. The debate over lifting technology is equally alive. While the earthen ramp theory is compelling for the primary elevation, what about the finer adjustments? How did they achieve the final hairline precision in setting each block? Some researchers point to evidence of large Lewis holes, special slots cut into the stone for gripping devices on some of the smaller podium blocks. This suggests the use of substantial cranes, perhaps a type of Roman treadwheel crane scaled up to a previously unimagined degree, for the delicate work of positioning. Yet no physical evidence of such a machine, nor any contemporary description of one capable of handling hundreds of tons, has ever been found. Was their true genius a hybrid approach, using ramps for the gross movement and a sophisticated, forgotten system of levers and counterweights for the final, perfect placement? Then there is the most provocative question of scale. Why push so far beyond the reasonable? The Trilithon blocks at 800 tons are already an achievement that defies belief. So why would the architects and engineers then proceed to quarry a block nearly twice that size? From a purely practical standpoint, it makes no sense. The difficulty increases exponentially, not linearly. This was not a case of slightly bigger being slightly better. This was a deliberate, conscious leap into a realm of near impossibility. The only explanation that fits is a symbolic one. The size itself was the imperative. There appears to have been a point where engineering logic was secondary to a statement that needed to be made in the most overwhelming terms possible. A statement so important that they were willing to risk total failure to attempt it. Beneath these Roman questions lies an even deeper layer of mystery. Some scholars examining the site's layout and the placement of the very largest stones have proposed a radical idea. Could the Romans have been building upon a much older, pre-existing megalithic foundation? The concept suggests that the colossal podium, or at least part of it, was already in place, crafted by a forgotten civilization with its own tradition of moving mountains. The Romans, arriving at this already sacred and awe-inspiring site, would then have simply adopted and expanded upon these ancient, giant foundations, adding their own classical architecture on top. While conclusive proof for this theory remains elusive, it is a powerful reminder that human history in the Beqaa Valley stretches back thousands of years before Rome's legions ever marched. Each new archaeological layer peeled back has the potential to reveal that the story is even older and more complex than we ever dared to imagine. These lingering gaps in our knowledge are not a sign that archaeology has failed. Quite the opposite, they are the open doors that keep the story alive and dynamic. They are invitations. Every unanswered question is a beacon for the next generation of researchers armed with ground-penetrating radar, artificial intelligence for analyzing tool marks, or satellite imagery detecting subtle soil disturbances. The true legacy of Baalbek is not just in the answers it has provided, but in the profound, humbling questions it continues to ask. It teaches us that the past is not a static diorama but a living conversation, and that the most enduring monuments are those that never stop making us wonder. The silent endurance of those stones offers a profound correction to our modern assumptions. We often view history as a steady march upward, a linear progression from primitive tools to sophisticated machines, with each generation inherently more capable than the last. Baalbek stands as a monumental counterargument to this comforting narrative. It forces us to accept that ancient cultures could achieve isolated, staggering peaks of technological mastery that do not neatly fit onto our smooth timeline of progress. Their greatest innovations were not generalized but intensely focused, laser-targeted solutions to the specific cultural imperatives of their moment. For Rome, that imperative was the fusion of imperial propaganda and divine expression, the need to manifest absolute power in a form that would awe subjects for millennia justified an almost limitless investment of intellect and labor. This was not innovation for innovation's sake. It was engineering in service of ideology, and it produced results that still push the boundaries of our understanding. This reveals a crucial distinction. We tend to equate technological advancement with the widespread adoption of conveniences, from plumbing to mass production. The Romans at Baalbek were not necessarily more technologically advanced across the board than their predecessors. Instead, they possessed a zenith capability in one extraordinarily demanding niche: megalithic logistics and precision stonework, supported by a social machine of unparalleled scale. They could organize 10,000 people to move a single block with the coordination of a single organism, a feat of social engineering we might struggle to replicate today. This leads us to a humbling realization about knowledge itself. It is not a permanent, ever-growing library. It can be peak-specific, brilliant in one context and absent in another. It can be lost. The meticulous methods that quarried, transported, and placed the Trilithon were not preserved in a manual for the ages. They faded with the social and economic structures that made them possible. When the empire's will and resources shifted, that specific, sublime knowledge of moving mountains simply ceased to be necessary, and like a muscle unused, it atrophied. For our own age, which often views its technology as the inevitable pinnacle, Baalbek serves as a quiet caution. It asks us to consider what unique capabilities we are building that are entirely dependent on our own fragile systems of energy, global supply chains, and social stability. It challenges the bias that our tools define a superior intelligence, reminding us that human ingenuity, when channeled by a powerful enough purpose, can achieve the seemingly impossible with the simplest of materials. The true lesson is not about how they did it, but about the conditions that allowed such a feat to even be attempted, a reminder that our greatest limitations are often not of technology, but of imagination and collective will. Walking onto the podium at Baalbek is a physical education in humility. Your eyes first try to make sense of the fallen columns, scattered like giants' matchsticks, but it is the wall at your feet that commands a deeper attention. The Trilithon does not simply sit there, it asserts itself. Running a hand along its cool, polished surface, you are touching a seam so perfect it feels machined, yet it was born from chisel strikes and human patience. The scale is not a number in a book anymore, it is a presence. You have to crane your neck just to see the top of a single block, and the mind struggles to reconcile this immovable mass with the idea of it ever being in motion. This is where theories dissolve into sensation. You feel small, and in that smallness, you begin to grasp the sheer audacity of the people who put it here. The intellectual mystery of how becomes intimately wrapped in the emotional question of why anyone would ever need to do something so profoundly difficult. The answer seems to echo from the stone itself, because they believed the message was worth the impossible labor. Moving from the temple complex toward the quarry is a journey back to the moment of conception. The path winds past later additions, medieval fortifications built into Roman walls, a visual testament to the site's continuous reinvention. Then you see it, the stone of the pregnant woman, lying in its earthen cradle. Photographs cannot prepare you for the vertigo of standing at its base. It is not just a block, it is a geography. You could walk its length for 20 paces, its height towers over you, and its sheer sides block out the sky. Seeing the precise channels cut for its extraction, touching the tool marks left by a worker 2,000 years ago, makes the past shockingly immediate. This is not a ruin, it is a paused project. You half expect to hear the foreman shout, the creak of ropes, the collective groan of effort. The quarry makes the achievement at the temple even more astonishing, because here you witness the raw material of the dream, the point of origin for an ambition that literally moved mountains. For a visitor, Baalbek operates on two levels simultaneously. It is an open-air museum of layered history, where Phoenician stones meet Roman grandeur under an Ottoman fortress. You can read that history in the signage and the guides, but more powerfully, it is a direct sensory dialogue with human ambition. Your body understands the scale before your mind can fully process it. Your sense of touch confirms the precision that your eyes report. The silent, overwhelming presence of the megaliths communicates a truth that no textbook ever could, that there are moments in our shared story when vision, will, and organization converge to create something that was meant to stop time itself. You leave not with a neat answer, but with a feeling, a resonant awe that lingers long after you have departed the valley. That feeling is perhaps the most authentic connection we can have with the builders, a shared, wordless recognition of something truly extraordinary. The next chapter of this story will be written not with shovels but with sensors. Unlocking Baalbek's remaining secrets demands we look closer than ever before at the microscopic world within the stone itself. Imagine a scientist in a lab, not an archaeologist in the field, examining a tiny sample taken from the stone of the pregnant woman. Using a technique called geochemical sourcing, they can analyze the stone's unique fingerprint, the precise mix of minerals and isotopes locked within it. This could potentially match the block to the exact layer of bedrock it was cut from, confirming whether all the megaliths came from the nearby quarry or if some were sourced from a more distant yet undiscovered site. This subtle science turns the stone into a travel log, revealing the very spot of its birth. Meanwhile, out in the valley, other researchers are using ground-penetrating radar to see without digging. They slowly push a cart over the earth between the quarry and the temple, sending silent pulses into the ground. On their screen, ghostly images form in the soil. Are those the faint, parallel lines of a buried road, compacted by unimaginable weight 2,000 years ago? Could there be foundational piers or even earlier construction phases hidden beneath the Roman podium? This technology allows us to map the unseen infrastructure, the vanished highways and platforms that were the true stage for this ancient drama. Even the chisel marks on the stones are becoming a new kind of text. Using advanced three-dimensional microscopy, specialists can now scan tool marks at a resolution finer than a human hair. The shape, depth, and pattern of each strike can tell a story. Was this groove made by a bronze chisel or an iron one? Does the sequence of marks reveal a left-handed or right-handed worker? By comparing these microscopic signatures across different blocks and even different ancient sites, we might one day identify distinct schools of stonemasons or trace the evolution of their techniques over the decades of construction. The most promising path forward, however, is not a single technology but a fusion of minds. The future of understanding Baalbek lies in interdisciplinary collaboration, where archaeologists sit down with materials scientists, structural engineers, and even experts in crowd dynamics and project management. An engineer can model the stress on a wooden roller. A geologist can explain why this particular limestone fractured so cleanly, and a historian can contextualize the labor force within the Roman economic system. Together, they can run sophisticated digital simulations that account for real-world variables like soil moisture, rope strength, and human fatigue, moving beyond simple theories into probable realities. This rigorous collective pursuit has a beautiful goal. It is not to reduce a wonder to a mere equation to explain away the magic. It is to translate that magic into a new language, one of profound respect for the specific human intelligence, the countless individual decisions, and the mountains of coordinated sweat that turned a vision into a monument. The more we understand the precise how, the more staggering the why becomes. Each new discovery, each answered micro-question, ultimately deepens our awe for the macro-achievement, ensuring that the stones will continue to speak not just of mystery, but of the magnificent capabilities hidden within our own history. The massive stones of Baalbek stand as a permanent question mark in the landscape of human history. They are more than a ruin, they are a conversation that has never truly ended, a dialogue between the past's ambition and the present's understanding. Our journey has taken us from the sacred whispers of the Canaanite storm god to the calculated imperial theater of Rome, from the humble chisel marks in the quarry to the mind-bending mathematics of moving 1,000 tons. We have measured the gaps between the stones with razor blades and measured the gap in our own knowledge with a profound and humbling respect. While the exact sequence of shouts, the precise angle of every ramp, and the names of the foremen may be lost to time, the central proof remains immovable and undeniable. The platform is there, the stones were moved. This is not a theory, it is a fact carved into the foundation of the world. That fact alone reshapes our view of history. It tells us that the timeline of human capability is not a smooth, upward slope, but a terrain of astonishing peaks and forgotten valleys. Civilizations can reach isolated summits of achievement, driven by a unique convergence of need, belief, and collective will, only to have that specific knowledge recede when the social conditions that demanded it change. Baalbek represents one of the highest of those peaks, a testament to what becomes possible when an entire society aligns itself toward a single, monumental expression. These giants do not simply defy modern lifting capacity, they challenge our modern arrogance, the quiet assumption that our technology makes us inherently more capable. They ask us to consider a different kind of strength, one built not on engines but on organization, not on steel cable but on synchronized human spirit. So let the silent presence of these blocks be a lasting invitation. Let them call us to remain curious, to question the easy narratives of progress, and to approach the past not with condescension, but with a sense of wonder and a readiness to be surprised. The greatest mysteries are not those with no answer, but those whose answers force us to expand our very definition of what is possible. If this exploration of ancient ambition has reshaped your perspective, consider subscribing for more journeys into the puzzles of our shared past. And we would love to hear your thoughts. What aspect of Baalbek's story resonates most with you in the comments below?